Memorial Day honors those who died in active military duty. On this Memorial Day in Owatonna, a family honored a veteran who helped thousands who survived and later struggled.
He's always been a fighter. I think it shows his character and stuff, and that he cares about others a lot. Doesn't like anything that's not fair to others.
Al Procopio's son Joe says his dad was proud of his service with the U.S. Navy. He was a blue water veteran stationed on the USS Intrepid off the coast of Vietnam in 1966. Decades later, Al developed cancer and diabetes, which he believes was related to exposure to Agent Orange, the herbicide U.S. forces dumped on Vietnam to kill crops and eliminate jungle vegetation.
He was in the hospital a lot. His mobility, just watching him, he was actually very good at accepting his limitations, but seeing him get more and more limited each and every year, things just kept getting taken away from him, just physically.
But the VA hospital in 2002 removed Agent Orange-related benefits from blue water veterans like Al, even though, according to his attorney, Al and tens of thousands of others drank water on the aircraft carriers contaminated with the chemical.
Agent Orange killed him. No doubt in my military mind. That's what killed him.
Al and attorney John Wells sued and won, expanding VA benefits to about 90,000 Blue Water Navy Vietnam veterans.
Proud of my dad.
Al's family will miss the sarcastic guy who loved his fishing trips. And on this Memorial Day, thanks and gratitude are pouring in on Al's obituary guest book from fellow veterans he never met who were helped by his fight. Al will be buried at Fort Snelling Cemetery in St. Paul. In Owatonna, Lou Raguse, KARE 11 News.